Scott, you had full status on PGA Tour Latinoamerica and you gave it back, took a job selling HVAC systems, and somehow you're playing maybe the best golf of your life. Could you walk me through the day that you decided to leave the golf course and head into the workforce?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of pros that eventually do stop or, see the, I guess, light at the end of the tunnel going away kind of go through the same process, right? Like, have I gotten as good as I think I possibly can? Have I chased this dream and kind of scratched the itch? Am I going to have any regrets? And that's what it came down to for me. I was obviously out there, gosh, it was 10 years ago now, and guys like Corey Connors out there. Harry Higgs came through that tour after Nate Lashley was out there. I remember seeing Steven Yeager chasing Mondays down there. And then there I was, kind of playing at the time. It was a huge accomplishment for me to gain status down there, and unfortunately had too many weekends off, which doesn't pay very well in the professional golf world. But really what it came down to is at the time, I was still, I don't know, 24 or something like that, whatever it was, when I decided to hang it up. I knew I was still young, but the decision kind of came was I felt like I had gotten as good as I possibly could have. I chased a dream. Even to this day, I don't have any regrets that I wish I was still out there, or I wish I dragged it along. But it's a tough for a lot of people, could definitely be a tough reality to face. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people who chase that dream, and not just golf, in any sport, that's eventually what it comes to. But look, I enjoyed my time out there. I had a lot of support, so I got to travel around, play a bunch of golf in some beautiful countries, and see the world a little bit at a young age. So it was a great time. It was worth everything that I put into it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, there's some really cool travel in there, some really cool experiences. What did the professional golf grind look like when you're jumping around country to country? Like you've got a random Tuesday in Honduras. What walk me
Yeah.
through, maybe you're playing a practice round, you're getting a little work in. For the people who don't, professional golf has changed a little bit. The PGA Tour pipeline has changed a little bit. What did the grind look like on PGA Tour Latino America? Don't you hate it when somebody takes 2 minutes out of your podcast to tell you about something? That's why I'm just going to take 30 seconds to tell you that if you install Play Ready Golf, you can get tour level strokes gain data for just 30 seconds a hole. And that strokes gain data then turns into a practice plan that gets better as you improve. And it takes into account the time and the facilities that you already have access to. If you want to get that down below, use code PRGPOD and it'll get you $20 off every single year for life under 30.
The travel for me was the biggest thing. I didn't even have a passport. I had never left the country until I went to Colombia for Q school. And then all of a sudden you're kind of thrust into, here's the schedule for the season. You got to figure out how to book your travel and manage from week to week. Who are you going to travel with? Because I didn't have a ton of money, so I was saving every dollar everywhere that I could. Not to mention, I'm traveling to all these countries where I don't speak the language, and going through airports, restaurants, the golf course, dealing with caddies. So the travel is the hardest thing, but you kind of get used to a lot of that stuff. It's really what every kid wants. Obviously, with PJ Tour, you now, I think one kid's going to the PJ Tour, another handful are going to the Corn Ferry Tour, and then another handful of them are going straight to Americas. It's a great tour to play on. They do a great job. It feels very professional. So at that time, when you're at a young age and you're chasing it, there's a small sense of I'm making some progress towards my goal of playing on the Corn Ferry Tour, playing on the PGA Tour. So then you could kind of get into living the life that you always dreamed of, right? Once you get that travel aside, you start to be like, okay, Monday's kind of chill. Maybe I'll sneak out and play 9 holes. What am I going to work on? If I miss the cut this week, it's kind of a balance. Do I bounce early and then try to, you know, see if I could get my money back on this hotel, just get to the next place early to start getting ready and building your practice schedule. But that's really what it is you start to kind of live the life that you always dreamed of on maybe a little bit of a smaller level. But again, at the time when I was young and just getting started, it feels like a very big deal. You know, you've got status. When I'm home at the time, you know, I can play at all the TPC courses in the US and get better. So there's definitely some perks on that side of it. Um, but everybody kind of finds their lane and what works, and then you just got to try to play well week in and week out.
Yeah, and that's, the travel stuff is fascinating, and you walk away from then having golf as a job, but you obviously didn't walk away from golf, you're still playing at a very high level. So I kinda wanna figure out what came with you and what stayed behind from your professional days. Like, you used to practice a ton like it was your
Yeah,
job because it was your job, and now you have 40 plus hours a week that are spoken for. What were maybe
yeah.
the first 1 or 2 things that got cut?
As far as practice goes,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously the time. You know, when I hung it up professionally, at least, I really didn't play. You know, I got my first job several months after I moved. I was living in Las Vegas at the time when I was playing. I moved down to Phoenix, got my first job, and my buddies and I have this golf trip that we do in South Carolina every year, and you know, we're going on, I don't know, 13 or 14 years, something like that, that we've been doing it. And outside of that one weekend, I was maybe playing once or twice, 2 or 3 times a year for probably the next 4 or 5 years, and I had, like, no desire to go out and play, let alone go out and practice, right? And then
yeah,
my wife and I, my now wife, you know, we were dating at the time. We moved to San Diego for what I thought was the right career move for me. We ended up moving back to Phoenix, to Scottsdale 5 years ago, and then I kinda fell in love, with the game again and started playing more poorly, which kind of drove me nuts. And then, you know, because I felt like I should still be playing at the level that I was.
mm,
But obviously, I had taken all that time away from the sport. I'm not practicing at all. And then I kind of started thinking about, like, okay, I need to maintain a little bit of my abilities here for as long as I can. Um, and then after that, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about practice and things like that. But you just kind of try to make time for some of the little things. But you know, I would start to get out and play more. I'd maybe hit a few extra balls or some chips and putts on the range. But really, it was mostly playing with some buddies, playing with some friends that were out there. And then I kind of got hooked.
yeah. How long did it take for you to flip the switch from being on a golf course feeling like it's work, because it was, to being on a golf course and enjoying it for it being golf, like going back to when you were growing up, enjoying the game?
It was pretty immediate once I realized that, you know, with PTO or whatever, I go play a round of golf and I'm still getting paid. And if I go out and play poorly, it doesn't affect my job.
Yeah,
And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't put the roof over my head at risk. So really, it was pretty quick. And there was a part of me that was saying or thinking, you know, was it possible or is it possible to have had that mentality or even the mentality that I have now when I was playing professionally? And you know, I've got a lot of buddies that are still playing on different tours, playing very well, and it's tough for me to give them that advice because in all reality, their results and their livelihood directly correlated from how they're playing on the golf course. So it was pretty quick for me to enjoy it. Again, the mid am circuit is a lot of fun because you start to meet a lot of guys that are in the same boat. You know, we pretty much all work full time jobs, some more flexible than others, you know, families, this and that. I think Nate in his interview with you said it best, like, there's really, at this point in my life, never going to be a single round of golf that drastically changes my life at all. My wife's not a golfer, so she could care less if I won the Mid Am and got into the Masters outside of maybe like a good trip in April.
Yeah.
But other than that, like my day to day life isn't going to change at this point.
Yeah. That's, that's how I felt, like, obviously, I didn't play professionally, I just played, like, small ball, played little D2 school here in Ohio.
Hmm.
But I remember the first round after college golf feeling so free. Like, I was a generationally bad driver of the golf ball in college is how I would have described it, like, just abysmal. And I always thought it was something to do technical or decision making or something like that. I still remember the first round of golf I played after graduation. I think I hit almost. If I didn't hit every fairway, it was pretty close. And I
Hmm.
was like, "Man, this is so weird." Like, I've never felt like the fairways are bigger. It's just when it goes from there's more consequences outside just your score, I think that's where it comes from. There's a lot, the consequence for you was financial, or the consequence for a college golfer is maybe a spot in the roster, or knowing that their score is going to get posted on Instagram, or something along those lines. And I think that that changes now, especially I know for me, and I'm sure for you, kind of how you view going out and playing, or even like what you do when you go to the range. The range was your office effectively there for a long time. So like, what was something that you did either every day as a pro or routinely as a pro now that now you look back and maybe think not necessarily that it was a waste of time, but you look back and you say, I wish I would have done this differently. All right, I'm back to tell you about the second link down below. If you click on that one, it's going to send you one email a day with a science based hack that you can implement right away. I promise that you will get so much information out of those 30 days. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, there's times I wonder, thinking about it more after, hearing a lot of your interviews and some of the stuff that you post, are there times that I was out there just because I felt like I needed to be out there
Mm,
as a pro, right? Golf at that time in my life, was the only thing that I needed to worry about. And my only focus was trying to get as good as I can. I was pretty good about trying to structure my practice based on either stats or how I felt like my game was, or the swing coach I was working with at the time, and trying to kind of implement some time blocks and be a little bit more organized with what I was doing. And I really didn't even think about it like that when I was a pro. My day to day was being on the golf course, being on the range, being on the putting green, and doing things like that. Now it's obviously much different because I have different responsibilities throughout the week and the month and the year. Um, but I would say that's the biggest thing is I kind of think about those days now and would I have benefited from a day off, or not skipping a trip to
mhm.
go and visit some buddies and hang out with some friends and kind of fill some of those other buckets of life at that time to, I don't know, if be a little bit more happy or maybe be a little bit more well-rounded, when it comes to some of those life events and things like that. But that's really it. Is I wonder, was I out there just because I felt like I needed to be, or because I had nothing else going on, and I'm skipping other stuff to just so I can go putt and chip for a couple hours. I would say that's probably the biggest thing.
Mm. Well, and you mentioned family time, and you didn't have a lot of stuff going on back then. Well, now you've got a lot going on, right?
Hmm.
Married, newborn, congratulations.
Thank you.
You've got a full-time gig, and you're also playing, we're gonna get into it. You will sell yourself short. You're still playing unbelievably high level golf. So what does the balance look like for those guys who maybe feel like when I spend an hour going and hitting balls, or maybe I go and play around in golf, like how do you make the most of that time knowing that there are other responsibilities outside of golf? Because I think that's something that
Yeah,
can be tough to balance even just like emotionally, right? Like I don't have any
sure.
kids. I'm married. Like when I go, I know I'm leaving to go practice or go play. and I know that, like, my wife's just hanging out here at home, right? Like, so
Yeah,
how do you guys balance that? Because I know that I mean, that obviously has a lot to
sure.
do with I'm
I
sure you heard, like, we've talked a lot about how the whole mid-am circuit is just propped up by a bunch of wonderful wives effectively.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And I would say that it's a tough, I don't know, maybe it's not a tough balance to find because there's plenty of days where or weekends that playing golf is just not an option,
Yeah,
right? Somebody's kid's got a birthday, we've got dinner plans with some friends that, as you get older, it's tough to stay close to a lot of friends. So you try to plan some schedules and plan some things ahead of time. I would say for me, my practice kind of looks really more like a cram session the week or days leading up to a tournament. And it really only looks like, can I sneak over to the putting green and hit some putts and chips for 30 minutes and get ready. I would say at this point in my golfing life, I'm really focused on just doing the good things really well, or the things that I'm good at really well. So I don't have a huge craving to, go out and practice for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours like I used to. I will say that I'm really very lucky with my work schedule, my boss, and my leadership. My boss probably plays more golf than I do, but when it's time for work and time for business, it's time for work.
yeah.
So I'm definitely pretty lucky in that regard. I could sneak out during the week, sneak out early on a Friday. Honestly, weekend golf is rare for me outside of begging my wife to play on a Saturday or a Sunday because I have some tournament that she doesn't care about or she doesn't know anything about the next week, and she rarely says no. I will give her credit, so she's very supportive, especially with now an almost 1 year old at home. But I'll try to sneak out during the week. If I am playing, I'll try to hit some balls and take care of the little things. But I've really found myself at this point in my playing career trying to do a lot of the things outside of the golf course to continue to play golf at a high level. And that's, working on my fitness so I don't have any back problems. I've had kind of a long journey with equipment changes and things like that, and learning about equipment. I'm trying to remove as many variables as possible because I'm not playing as much. So the time that I am out there, I can really just focus on, maintaining my swing, my putting stroke, my chipping, my feel, and things like that. So I would say at this point in my life, I'm trying to do as much as I can with the time that I have. And most of that is away from the golf course.
Yeah, so when you do get to the golf course, you do have some time with the club in your hands. You mentioned some things that you're maybe focusing on, like, practically, what does that look like?
Yeah, for me, it's really pretty simple and pretty boring. I would say the majority of my time if I'm just going to go and practice, I'll bring my putting mirror. That has been a reliable training aid for me. I'll set up a dead straight putt from about 5 feet. Outside of putts on that mirror, I'll jump off and I'll hit a couple 6 to 10 footers, that with a little bit of break. And then I get back on the mirror. And then I'll find a 18, 15, 18, 20 foot chip, grab all four of my wedges, hit 10 or 15 balls with each one. And then if I've got enough time at the end of that, I'll hit a couple fun like shots with the 60-degree wedge, and get a little creative and just hit some crazy shots. Some of the shots that you're probably more likely to see on the golf course. But my focus has really been, you'll never catch me hitting 15, 18, 20, 30 foot putts if I've got 30 or 40 minutes that I'm out on the putting green. My focus is the short putts and the boring chip shots that if I don't get those up and down on the golf course, or if I don't make that 3, 4, 5, 6 footer, that's where I'm going to be really upset. Are you upset if you miss a couple 12, 15 footers for birdie? Sure, but that happens, and that happens to guys on the PGA Tour. So I'm really trying to take care of the most simple and the most boring aspects of the game and try to stick on it there, because I feel like that's what helps me. And then if I get some range time, I love hitting some balls. I try to keep the wedge game and the wedge feels and some yardages pretty tight. My swing coach out here, JD Fernandez, I'll see him 4, 5, 6 times a year when I have a panic about my ball striking. But other than that, it's much more boring than the average golfer might think.
Yeah, I think there's a difference probably between boring and useful. Like, there's
Sure.
there right, like, that's and the other thing is, I think you can make that quote unquote "boring practice" really exciting if you just track it. Like, I
Hmm.
hated practicing putting until I was, like, 20 because I had
Hmm.
no there it was like, "Okay, well, what am I getting?" Like, I don't know what I'm getting out of this. I mean, once I started tracking how many makes I had during a certain drill or something along those lines, it made it way more fun, and it sounds like you've built up the memory over that to know
Hmm.
when things are going well or when they aren't, so that's great. On top of that, do you track anything? Are you tracking anything during rounds? Are you tracking or you just I mean, you played at a high level for a long time, or
Sure.
if you don't track stuff, would you recommend that for
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because in college, and I wonder if other teams were like that, right? And when I was in college, we tracked all of our stats, and we had to, you play your 36 whole days, which takes 12 hours, get Chipotle on the way to the hotel, and then coaches all over you about tracking your stats, which is just the last thing that any 18 or 19-year-old wants to do. Um, I didn't really do it too much when I was a pro. I started doing it last year just in the Gin app. I started doing the hole by hole
Yeah.
entry. I don't always do it when I'm on the golf course. A lot of times, if it's a place that I'm unfamiliar with, I will just because I won't remember. But I did start tracking, fairways, greens. Did I miss a fairway left or right? Did I miss the green left, right, short or long? The putts. It doesn't really track distances or makes or anything like that. I feel like I have a decent sense of that, but I've been doing that for about a year now, and it's helped me with my practice and the things that I'm working on, either by myself or with my swing coach, the guy that I work with. But it's also helped me with my equipment. And one interesting thing that stood out to me, if you asked me what I felt like my miss was, I felt like I always miss it left. I'd be like, I'm finding this left miss. That's where I live. And I started looking at my stats. I actually miss right significantly more. And then it's just not something that you think about. So I felt like that has become really useful for me. I do look at it. I'm not playing a ton, but I will look at it, every month or so to just kind of see if I'm tracking, kind of back to the middle. Am I getting a little bit better? Do I need to start working on some other things? So I would say it's very useful. I wish I put a little bit more effort into it back in my playing days. And when I was younger, I wish I was a little bit more receptive to it. It's also got it's far more simple to track now, whether it's in that Gin app. I see all these ads for all these things to track your stats and look at that. I feel like when we were doing it in college, it took forever to do,
Yes.
which is probably why it was such a pain. But it's simple now. I do it. I feel like it helps me. I'm going to continue to do it. So I've definitely embraced the statistical side of it.
Well, we'll get you on the app. I mean, we were doing the same thing. Part of the when we were building out the app, not to do the whole plug thing, but whatever, it is what it is. If you're listening to 24 minutes on the Play Ready Golf podcast, you kinda know what you're in for.
Yeah.
But, like, to your point, like, it was kind of a pain in the butt. So when we were developing the app, I told Luke, who had never used a stats app before, I was like, dude, this has to be like, I need the minimum amount of clicks. Cause if I'm gonna do stats, I don't need to have PTSD from college. Like that's not
Sure. Yeah,
it's
100%.
it's because it can get kind of brutal. And so yeah, now like you said, keeping simple stuff too allows you to kind of understand your tendencies. It sounds like you have a lot of intent behind what you're doing. You're understanding your tendencies a lot better, and you've been able to pressure test that quite a bit. Can you walk me through how that impacted your win at Grayhawk?
Well, prior to that, the Arizona Mid-Am, that was one that I had circled. I hadn't really been playing much at all. At the time, our son was, I don't know, it was a couple months ago, right? So he was 9 or 10 months. He'll be a year this weekend. So we're busy at home, right? And I'm sneaking away to play golf. My wife's, much, much more busy with her work schedule than I am. So probably about a month or so prior to the tournament, um, it was actually kind of right around the Masters time when I had heard Rory's interview. I'm sure everybody saw. He was like, "Oh yeah, I would drop my daughter off at school, take the jet over to Augusta, play, and then zip back." And he was like, I just felt so comfortable being out there. And I started kind of thinking, I was like, okay, what is my version of that?
Mm,
Um, it obviously did not involve a private jet zipping around to all these
really?
different golf courses. But for me, that was like, okay, I am playing in this scramble outing for work. A couple of these buddies are going to be home from Corn Ferry or America's Tour. So, we usually try to play when they have their breaks. And so I'm on my calendar, like on my work calendar, like I'm mapping out 3 or 4 rounds of golf. I played probably my first practice round. Um, I played the practice rounds obviously before the Mid Am a couple years ago. But other than that, I was just going out to a lot of these state events, like just showing up at the first tee before the first round. And so I decided to play a practice round. And so I would put on my calendar, hey, I'm playing golf these days. I'm going to sneak over to the public golf course by me and putt. Hey, I tell my wife, like, I'll be back in 40 minutes, and I'm just going to go putt and chip. I've got this little putting mat that I'm not allowed to have in the house, but my wife had some work travel. So when she was out of town, I would unroll it in the living room, get the mirror out. Again, going back to some of the simple and boring stuff. So I'm just trying to check as many boxes as I can. But prior to that tournament, that was my version of a lot of structure and preparation at this point in my life. Obviously, it worked out. I played well. Um, Trying to do some similar things for some other events that I have coming up and just make some subtle tweaks to get out there. And again, back to Rory's interview, I think if you can go out on the golf course and you feel like you're comfortable either with the golf course or some aspects of your game, um, it just kind of helps with confidence, which is going to help anybody play well.
Yeah, and, that's a tough course to be confident on. Like, and I
It
think a lot
is,
of us
yeah,
go to courses or we're on a buddy's trip and there's maybe the hard course circle on the calendar. I mean, for context, A, you started that final round 5 shots back, but B, the field made over 1,100 bogeys that week,
yeah.
which is insanity. Over 3 days, that's crazy. So going
Hmm.
into that round, you kinda know, like, I'm signing up for hard, right? Like, I'm signing up for a long,
Yep.
difficult day. How do you approach those long, difficult days?
Well, I've always been good on, or better, I guess, on a hard golf course. I'm not really a birdie machine. If we go out to some of these munis, or even back when I was playing, I was never a guy that was going to shoot four straight 66s. So I was really looking forward to it. And then going into that final round, I really had no plans or ideas of winning or chasing these guys down. The competition, especially at the mid-am level out here in Arizona, is so high. And Cody and Kurt, a couple other guys that were out there, they're great players. And the one thing that I did think about, I was talking to a buddy before the final round, is Grayhawk is a very hard golf course, and you can blink and be two or three over par in a hurry. And the only kind of thought that I had was, if I could play well, hit a few good shots, make a few birdies, and if I could get somewhere close on the back nine, I might have a chance. But again, my biggest thing was, I just wanted to like go out and play well and like finish what was kind of shaping up to be a nice week for me, and maybe use that as a springboard for some confidence in some other events. And then next thing you know, the guys I was playing with, they kind of struggled a little bit. I think they would admit the same thing. I made a few birdies and several coming in on that front nine. And then next thing you know, there I was, and I pulled up the leaderboard, I think on like 14. There was another guy in the group ahead of us that was then tied. So then I was like, oh my gosh, I got somebody else to worry about here now. But really, again, I even through all that, I was really just kind of focused on putting up another good number. Honestly, a nice finish that week. I was still going to be just as happy. Sneaking out the win was a little bit of a bonus, but that was kind of what that golf course is. It's tough, it's challenging. You can make a double on almost any hole out there. But I played well, felt comfortable, and obviously got the win, which was nice.
Yeah, that's incredible, and we'll talk about kinda what comes with that win and what doesn't come with that win here in a little bit, but,
Mhm.
I'm gonna call you out real quick, by the way. You said you don't really go low that often. You shot 59 at Tobacco Road.
Yeah,
Like,
only
that's
once
kind
though,
of
so definitely
that
not that
uh,
often.
but that's kinda insane. When everything is clicking like that for you, how do you keep your foot on the gas, or how do you not get in your own head?
Well, in that round in particular, that was on a buddy's trip. Um, and so me and the guys I was playing with, we were kind of having fun with it coming down the second nine. We started on 10, so we were finishing on the front nine. I turned it 5 under, birdied one and two, so now I'm 7 under through 12, and that's when the jokes. I don't know if everybody's like this, but I've said it a million times, right? You birdie the first two holes, I'm on 59 watch. Well, now all of a sudden, I'm 7 under through 11 holes, and it starts as a joke, and then, I make a par and then another eagle, and now I'm 9 under with like five or something to play. And so it's kind of still a joke. And then next thing you know, like I needed a birdie 18 to shoot 59. Okay, it's like this is a serious possibility here. But I would say outside of that, it's tough. I don't really even know how to answer that because, like I said, outside of that one round, a lot of guys, regardless of if you're a +4 or +5, or if you're a 5 or 6, 7, 8 handicap that's trying to break 80 for the first time, I would say the feelings are probably similar. Whether that's trying to make more birdies or trying to make more pars, or hey, I can only make two bogeys here out of these last four holes to shoot what is maybe my lifetime round. So it's really the impossible question to answer. I mean, I'm still kind of searching for it too, but the more I think about it, like again, going back to what Nate said, like however I finish any given round, whether it's a tournament, a course record, or a round with my buddies, like nothing is going to change. So there's always that comfort
Yeah.
there. at the time at Tobacco Road, I made a few birdies on the front nine. One of my other teammates was on that trip with us. I just wanted to shove like a 63 in his face, and then let him have it. And um, next thing you know, I'm 12 under par. So
Yeah.
it's a tough balance, and it's almost like that flow state and zen that every golfer's chasing. But I think whether it's for 59 or somebody that's going to shoot 79 for the first time, I would guess that the feelings are very, very similar,
Mm.
because you see these reactions from guys, all these guys on YouTube or whatever that you're playing with, that you see these posts on Twitter that I broke 100, I broke 90 for the first time. Like the reaction when they make that putt for that 79 or whatever it is the same,
Yeah.
regardless of what that is.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, I mean, you play obviously really, really well at these hard courses. You're now, this is more of a relaxed round, like you said, but still shooting 59 is obscene. Like your name's on the wall now at
Yeah.
Tobacco Road, which is sick. And then you've got something in the middle with Grass League. Can you walk me through? w- Uh, we interviewed, Nate's obviously playing Grass League. I think that that's such an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And can you walk me through kind of your involvement with that and where you see that going?
Yeah, I just signed with the Michigan Auto Aces for the first time, and a lot of my friends that have followed me, I've wanted to play in this for a while, and really for two reasons. One, because I feel like it's awesome, and I feel like it's going to grow and continue to grow, and probably continue to grow to the point where I'm no longer capable of playing on a team, because there's going to be better and better players that start to get involved. Um, but it looks like so much fun. I like the team aspect of it, but really it just comes down to getting a few more competitive events on the calendar. Everybody's out there; they want to win. Them and their partner, them and their team. They're growing the match series that they're running now on YouTube. They're doing the event at Goat Hill, which will be my first event coming up in September. So I cannot wait to get out there. I'm thankful for the opportunity. Hopefully, I can hang on and keep my spot on a team for a few years and have some fun. But everybody that I talk to that plays in it talks about how much fun it is. But it's because we all like competing and getting out there, and it's one more outlet to do so.
Hmm. That's great. And yeah, I think Grass League's sweet. Like I think it's a great concept. I think it's like you said, it's got all the right bones. I'm
For
excited to see where
sure.
it goes, and I'm excited to see
For
what
sure.
other things kind of grow off of it. Right, like it's going to
Absolutely.
inspire other things, which is really
Yeah.
interesting. Absolutely zero way to transition into this. You're a reinstated mid am. I'd love to talk about that
Yeah.
because obviously there's a lot of chatter around it. And once again, if you haven't heard a previous podcast of ours, we are not anti reinstatement. We are not anti the people who get reinstated. We're confused about what the USGA is doing, like because
Sure.
there's no transparency, and there to the public's knowledge, no one's ever been denied reinstatement. So at that point, it's confusing what's a professional, what's an amateur, if you can kind of just flow through. So, what
Yeah.
was your process like being reinstated? And then I want to talk about the US Mid Am a little bit. The final link down below is the 59-minute practice guide. If you grab that, it gives you a practice guide based on strokes gain data and motor learning research. If you just follow that, you're going to get so much better. And it gives you a nice preview of what the app will give you. Now back to the episode. Cheers.
Sure. Yeah. My last professional event was at the end of 2016. I got reinstated in 2023, 2022 or 23. Not because I had to wait that long. I literally did
Okay.
not file. I think,
Yeah.
so I stopped playing. I'm like, oh, maybe it'd be cool to jump into some of these other state events. I think I logged on and it was like $300 to get your amateur status back. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be an amateur that bad. So I just never did it. And so, I just got my first job, money was tight.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And so I was like, I don't really care that much to do it. So that was, 2016 or 2017. Fast forward, we moved back out here. I kind of find my love for the game again. I see obviously I knew about the mid am circuit, the US mid am, all the, now come to learn about all these other big mid am events. So I applied. I got mine back right away, probably for two reasons, because it had been, I think, 7 years, I think, since my last professional event. And I really hardly made anything as a
Yeah,
pro. So I got mine back quick. So it was pretty simple for me. You're right. I mean, I've never heard of anybody not getting it back. I have heard of some guys that, they hadn't played in 3 or 4 years, and then the USGA still makes them wait another 4 years.
yeah,
Um, they obviously don't post, there's no chart, right? Of if you've
yeah,
played this many events or you made this amount of money correlates to this amount of time away from the game before we will grant it back, or you played on the PGA Tour, or you only played mini tour
mhm,
events. So, I mean, look, I've obviously got a different, or a probably a biased opinion because I was a former pro, but when you think about it, like, what's the option, right? Like, when you come out of college, you have to weigh the option of, like, do I continue to chase this dream to try to achieve my goals, my lifelong goals of playing on the PGA Tour, or do I hold out because I want to try to play in the US Mid Am
yeah,
1 year? And to me, that seems like a simple answer. And to punish somebody for trying to chase a dream, golf's so different. I some of my buddies have played hockey or play basketball. Um, they have nothing like what the game of golf has. If they go out and play pickup hockey or pickup basketball, these guys that played in college, these guys that played professionally after, it's not as much fun for them because not everybody's as good as they are. And then if they do try hard, everybody else looks at them as some arrogant guy that's out there that's just better than everybody else.
yeah,
Golf, there's, I think, a much more level playing field. I understand, some people are like, protect the amateurism, protect the game, and this and that. But our sport's unique. The reinstatement process probably has to be somewhat objective, or I'm sorry, subjective, and it is what it is, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah, it's, all these issues normally come back to money somehow, right? Like, if you're confused by something, it's normally because money's flowing in one direction or another. This is
Sure.
one where it's like, I think they're just I don't think the USGA necessarily makes a ton more because there's more mid-ams. Like, you can only have so many US mid-am qualifiers, um, that you're hosting, and they
Sure.
all sell out right away, right? Like,
They
that's one
do.
thing you gotta be
Yeah, they
on
do. Yep.
quickly. But I think having more competitive mid-ams means having more high-level mid-am events, which
Mhm.
means you have more events regionally that
For
people can get
sure.
involved with, and I think
For
it trickles
sure.
down really nicely. I think they're we're I'm excited to work on this kind of bigger project talking about the history of mid-ams and all that good stuff, but,
Yeah.
there just there just needs to be some transparency would be nice of this is what like you said, if you played at this level for this amount of time, like, it's a calculator almost, right? And then that also
It's
makes
tough.
the decision easier for a college player or for somebody who's played professionally to say, "Should I keep playing state opens and stay professional, or is it worth me waiting?" Like, if you don't necessarily know how long it's gonna be, then it confuses everybody on every side, right?
It's tough though, because if some kid comes out and wins their state open, they probably made more money than I ever did as a pro.
Mhm.
Because it so it's a balance, right? So is it a
Yeah.
money thing? Is it a status thing? What if you had no status but you Mondayed in, or you got a sponsor's
Mhm.
invite? Like that, there's an endless amount of questions.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'd love to go and play pickup hockey a ton. I'm not as good as a lot of the guys that go out and do it, so it's not as fun for me. And
Yeah.
if I go and play in a league, there's a bunch of guys that drop down that are way better than I am. So it's not as fun for me. And so I think maybe some other guys in the golf world maybe have that same kind of
Mm,
feeling if they look around and they're, hey, there's 8 reinstated pros that are in this field. But I play a bunch of these Arizona golf events. I get beat all the time by guys that didn't play in college, guys that played other sports in college, guys that found the game later in life. So I really don't think there's a state organization where these reinstated pros are rolling over the competition. I think when they do, it gets a little bit of a spotlight, especially the better of a professional career that they had, and the world of social media that we
yeah.
live in. But our sport's unique. It allows for you to chase it and then be reinstated. How fast? Again, just like you're saying, nobody really knows. But I don't know. I've seen some people on Twitter. They're like, oh, if people say Colt Knost, this guy should never be allowed uh, to play in a mid-am event. It's like, what's he supposed to do? You're telling this guy he can't have fun, the fun that we're having on the mid-am circuit, like
Well, and it's
that.
also not on him, right? Like, it's on the
Correct,
USGA. So that's
correct.
where yeah. And that's what you know, I think Brandon Holtz, we're both you're from Illinois, right?
I
From
am.
if I
Yep,
got that. I'm
yep.
from Illinois, like, having Brandon Holtz, an Illinois State guy, play in all these high level events is sick. Like, obviously, he's got
Sure.
20 years, right?
Yeah,
Scott, so you contrast that with a guy like Scott Turner, who runs the minor league golf tour, won the Gasparilla, didn't even play in college.
yep,
Like, the background moving into mid amateur golf matters significantly less. Um, it's not like the senior tour where they're all still playing professionally and you're trying, you got some guys like, I'm going to make it on the senior tour. It's like, well, you're going to be playing against the guys who've been playing professionally for forever. Like, this
yeah.
is different. Being a mid am means you're not
Sure.
making money off of playing golf. That
Yeah,
means you have to make your money somewhere else. And that means you have to
exactly.
spend time doing other things other than just playing golf.
Which takes away from
Um,
playing golf.
yeah. So I
Yeah,
don't know. I think it's such a like I can see myself in both sides of the mirror on it for sure. But
yeah,
it's also it's like play better, man. Like, you're never gonna hear me complaining if a guy who was professional turned amateur and then beat me in a tournament. It's like, well, then I
yeah.
should have played better. Like, he was also in the field
Right.
and I didn't beat him.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Cool.
get some of my buddies that'll tease me and they'll make the joke just because this conversation has gotten, so polarizing over the last
Yeah.
year or two. But look, the sport allows for it. I think
Yeah.
it's great. There's plenty of mid-ams that are way better than me and playing all these big events that I want to play in, that I hopefully can play in someday. These guys had much, much more successful professional golf careers than I did, but I'm not trying to shove them
Yeah.
shove them out of the game.
Oh. No, I think it really is the more the merrier. I think it's a lot on how does USGA handle it? And then also, like, how do you handle succeeding, right? Like, I think it's also a little bit on the, let's say somebody has a lot of success in mid-am golf and then is going and bragging about how they're playing, how their professional days were. It's like, I don't know. That's maybe not super tasteful, right? Like, that's like, but that's
Yeah,
also, well, and I think the USGA also has some on their hands with the US mid-am gaining a lot of traction.
yeah, it's
Which
become very popular.
you won your state mid-am, the Arizona State mid-am, which is, I would argue, probably, I'd say Arizona has a top 5 most difficult state mid-ams
Sure.
to win. I mean, there's a lot of really good players out there.
Hmm.
What are your playing privileges since you won that? Because directly impacted by that. Did you get into the state
Oh,
am? Did you get into the US mid am?
I did not get into the U.S. Mid-Am. I have heard some rumors that exemption will be coming. I don't know if it's next year or the year after. But if you win your state junior, you get into the U.S. Junior. If you win your state am, you get into the U.S. am. Feels very natural to follow the same process for the mid am. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case for this year. So there's gonna be a few other mid am events. I kind of tried to strike while the iron was hot, because I have this whole long list of mid am events that I'd love to play in, but it does kind of feel like a closed door almost. It feels like a lot of the
Mhm.
same guys are going back to the same event every year. They've probably got a relationship with the tournament director, the staff there. They're getting the invites. So it's almost like in order to get into some of these ones, you have to play in others, but you somehow have to weasel your way into a couple. So I blasted out a lot, probably 3 or 4 emails to some tournament directors right after the win, a few of which said like, hey, we typically would provide, you will get in. Having won the Arizona Mid Am, a couple others were like, hey, congratulations, we encourage you to apply. A couple that didn't get back to me and probably don't care. But at this point, my goal is to sneak into a couple of those events. Hopefully, I can play well, get into a couple big ones. Um, I wish it came with a couple more privileges than it really did. But I'm just hoping that it leads to a couple more events that I can play in. Again, it just goes back to having fun. My wife,
Yeah.
son, come along with, make a week out of it. Some family come out. My friends still follow along all the live scoring updates,
Yeah.
and the group chats are always going off. So
Oh, yeah.
hopefully, it just leads to a few more events that I can play in throughout the year.
Well, before we move to close, you mentioned how winning these events, you take some family trips, things along those lines. Being a dad, what are some of the things that you got the perspective bump, if you will, now in this past year?
Yeah,
Uh, you know, looking ahead, what are the lessons maybe you learned as a professional or coming out of the professional game or now in the amateur game that you want to pass along to your son, whether they be directly golf related or just I've learned this life lesson
yeah,
through my experiences, and I'd love for my son to take that with him.
that's a good question. I wish I could think about that more, but what comes to mind first is, you hear in college, right? Like, or even before, sports or non-sports, right? That like um, nothing worth having, isn't worth working for, or however the saying goes. So I think what I would want to kind of teach my son or maybe younger golfers is, anything, whether it's golf or any other sport or business, success requires a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice. And I got
Mm,
this advice from a couple mentors really outside of the game of golf in my work life. The deals that you do that get bigger and bigger require more attention and more responsibility. And going from one role to being promoted up the corporate ladder. If you're maybe an entry level employee, you might think that a manager, a vice president, that life is good, and you just think that they're making more just because they've been there longer. But the reality is as you start to progress up that ladder, responsibilities grow, the time requirements that it takes grow, and the effort that it takes grows. And so that's something that I really hope that my son can pick up from me. And like I said, it applies to any sport, probably anybody's work life as well, and then even personal life, trying to
yeah.
be a good husband and a good dad, and be there for everybody. So I would say that would be what I hope sticks with him.
I love it. That's great, man. Well, thank you again for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for
2
having me.
last things.
Yep.
What's the next big thing circled on your calendar, and where can people find you?
Next big thing, we got our state match play next week. That I'll
Where's that
probably be
at?
playing. It's at
Okay.
Camelback Golf Club. So it'll be a fun event, and then the U.S. Mid Am qualifier at the end of August, which is a Mid Am's Super Bowl, and then other than that, I'm on Instagram just like everybody else. I'm not really too active. I try to be more. I think if you look at my page, it's really just a bunch of posts of my son that my wife shares. I try to post a little bit more, but other than that, I'm around like anybody else is.
Yeah, you're busy selling HVAC units.
Yeah,
That's in my family's blood. My grandfather owned
I
an HVAC company, so I'm, you
good,
know,
nice.
respect it and love it, love it. Thanks again,
Yeah,
man. Scott, this was a
thank
great
you.
conversation. Thanks for hanging out for 50 plus minutes, man. This was great. We'll put all the links to your stuff down below if people want to go follow you.
Appreciate it.
And hopefully we'll talk soon, man.
Yeah,
Thanks.
of course.